Get into the mic.
No, you don't have to. It's more so just a pickup sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ready? Yeah, the white one. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna get started. So good evening. Thank you for joining us for our Falls List Town Hall. My name is Bridget Pride. I'm the LISSA president for this year, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. So I'm just going to introduce Amy Pattee and Dean Abels, who are both here to answer any questions that the Simmons List students have about the program, the school, anything. We'll be taking questions through the form that we've sent out online, through email and on Facebook and Twitter. So please keep those coming in. Also, any students here tonight, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So without further ado, here we go.
All right, gang. So I do want to take your questions, but first I just wanted to give you guys an update on something that I hope you all are interested in and that I know a lot of you guys have participated in. So a couple of weeks ago, a bunch of people were visiting Simmons from the ERP, an external, an external review panel associated with the Committee on Accreditation of the American Library Association. And they were visiting to check out our program and to confirm some of the stuff we wrote about in our self-study that we've been working on for the last year or so with an eye towards ensuring our continued accreditation by the ALA. So the ERP came and visited with a lot of students, so thank you student leaders and all students for participating in that open house with the ERP. They visited us, they read our self-study, they talked to a lot of people, they sat in on classes, and what they produced was a description of our program, some feedback about our program. And that feedback and description of our program are part of our accreditation, but not the final part. So they report on their visit to us, and they report on their visit to us, as well as to the Committee on Accreditation. We'll get a final version of that report. We were allowed to correct some errors that they had made, and they were very minor. We'll get a final version of that report, and then we'll be waiting to meet with the Committee on Accreditation in February at ALA Midwinter. When we meet with the Committee on Accreditation at ALA in midwinter, we'll do a little Q&A with them. They might ask us some questions about our self-study, about the ERP experience, and they'll give us some feedback. They might tell us at that time what it's looked, I think the informal, the unofficial, like, thumbs up, keep going like you're going, and then we'll get a official note from them around March or so.
Within 48 hours.
Within 48 hours. I thought we had to wait a couple weeks. So within 48 hours. So sometime around the middle or end of February, we should find out from the ALA and the Committee on Accreditation the status of our bid for continued accreditation. Now, what I'm going to share with you is from that report. And I want to assure you all that the report was very, very positive. They really liked their visit. They really appreciated meeting with students. They thought all the stuff that we were doing was awesome. And so their report was like better than we could ever have imagined. So they praised our faculty, they praised our students and our alumni, they acknowledged our diversity efforts, they looked at so many of you guys, and this was terrific, participated in a survey that the ERP had sent out about the student experience. Now, we haven't seen the data from that survey yet, but they really appreciated the response rate, and they acknowledged particularly how people had talked highly about our student organizations, about all these ways to get involved. And so all of you who are here, I imagine, are among the people who are involved at Simmons. I know we've got some student leaders here, and you're all to be commended for the work that you do to continue the life of the student and the student organization here at Simmons. They also talked about how they felt, the students felt like in general, and this was very good for us to hear, students felt like they were part of the program, that they had opportunities to participate in the program, not just at the student organization level, but also at the kind of administrative level. They felt heard, students felt heard by their faculty members, by the administration. And that was really good. That was really important for us. One thing that was, I thought, something that I hope that we can work on, a lot of students during the student meeting with the ERP had a lot of really good ideas this is what we heard. They had a lot of really good ideas for getting our entire student body involved with SLIS. And that entire student body includes folks who are participating with us online. So I would love to hear those ideas and see how we can get those started and get those working out. It sounds like folks have been really thinking about how we can get the entire student body involved, and I think this might be one of our next big steps forward, particularly with students. So the ERP talked about how much the students were engaged, how much you guys had a strong sense of community, and that strong sense of community is due to all of our efforts, and more importantly, all of our student organization efforts to develop this sense of community. One thing that they heard, and I want to underline that this was passed on. So the ERP heard some challenges that we're facing with regards to communication. More specifically, students, and this was reiterated kind of across the board, students don't necessarily understand what's going on at the big Simmons level. What is this reorganization? What's happening? What does this mean for my degree? What does this mean for SLIS? And this is something that I think we kind of recognize might be the function of a greater or a longer communication chain than just me and Eileen to students and faculty. It's a bigger communication chain that includes all of Simmons. Now, that was a really important observation, and that's something that was really important for us to ensure that the ERP made the administration aware of. And I think that the administration really heard that. The ERP, Eileen and I went to meet the provost and the president, where the ERP pretty much reiterated just what I'm talking to you guys about. And they spoke frankly about some of the communication challenges. And I think that Katie and whatever our president's name
Ellen.
is. Sorry, just spaced for a second. I think that Katie and Helen really heard that. And I think one of the things that really made them hear that was because it came from students. And you know how it is in a workplace, you kind of grouse sometimes among yourselves, and you know who the complainers are, and sometimes that makes concerns harder to hear. Well, when the people that we're essentially working for, and that's our students, reiterate some of those concerns, that's super important. And so I just want you to know that that was really heard, and I think that that's something that we're going to continue to work on and that we're going to see improvement in at the upper administration level. So very nice self-advocacy, and self-advocacy that I think is really going to affect some change. So good show. You guys turned out very well. You had nice conversations with the ERP, and I think you were a really significant contributor to the really good feedback that we got. So pat ourselves on the back. We're almost done, and I think it's going to be a positive outcome. So yay, us. I got to say, tremendous load off my mind. So with that, what questions do you all have? I think Bridget mentioned a list of questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions in the room, feel free to just raise your hand.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, at the most recent student leaders meeting, there were some conversations about the library and some of the things that are going on with the library and how SLIS faculty in particular have been working to support library staff and resources during this campus reorg. If you could please give a brief synopsis of some of those efforts for folks who are online, or maybe folks in the room who don't know what's exactly going on, and then if there's been any updates in the last month or so.
Yeah, this one is a little bit challenging because I think, speaking as a faculty member here and not as an administrator, speaking as a faculty member, I have been experiencing the same kind of disruptive communication that we've all been experiencing. I've never seen what a plan for the final version of the library, what that's going to look like. I have a general idea of what's supposed to happen. The downstairs part of the library is going to be turned over into student space. That's also going to include the offices of a number of student service organizations. The first and the second floor of the library will be devoted to study space as well as our materials collection. And a significant outcome of this architectural reorganization was the fact that we did some pretty major weeding. And that weeding included a number of our periodical collections, and it included some old material. Now, we did get an update from one of the big concerns that I had heard, and I heard this from faculty and I heard this from students, was about the weeding. And so there were two ways that I respond to this. The first is from a professional perspective. As librarians and people who work in the information fields, we must recognize the importance of weeding our library collections for currency. And we also recognize some institutional demands that are made on our collections that require us to do some weeding. As professionals, we know that we're uniquely capable of making those hard decisions. And so I know that, Linda Schuler had shared with me some of the efforts that were made to ensure that the weeding was undertaken in a professional manner, including consulting appropriate bibliographies, developing a pretty, I would say, liberal timeline for weeding for age, and also developing a pretty liberal timeline with regards to circulation. We were sent a list of collections that were weeded. So it was organized by LC number. And it was interesting to find out that if I read this correctly, the list of things that were weeded did not include our LIS collection. So our LIS materials were untouched by the weeding hand. And that's something that I think might have been a result of our public concern about support for this library collection. So there was weeding that was undertaken, but I think that our LIS materials were not significantly weeded, with the exception of the periodicals. And the periodicals were weeded because we're able to replicate most of that material online in our online resources. And another reason why that might be important, or it might be important to focus on our online resources, is not just at SLIS, but across Simmons. We're expanding our reach through online programs. And our online students don't have the opportunity to come to our library necessarily. So making material available online that might have only prior to that been available in print is something that is important and keeps with the online expansion, but not replacement of our educational program.
Vivian
Rolling.
who's the library director, actually came to my class this past Monday. And I think, according to her, the reason that LIS collection didn't get cut is actually pure luck. Because we are our collection is on the first floor.
Yeah.
They're removing the basement level. Or ground floor. So that's why we got saved. But I don't know whether they really pay attention to, what the student and faculty need. So what we should be careful about is to kind of protect our profession, protect our collection, not just because, we got saved by luck. It could be gone. If we're not advocating for the entire library instead of, just focusing on our own collection.
Well, and I think, one of the things that the faculty did, not formally as a faculty, but as individual faculty members working together, many of us signed a letter that was created by LIS faculty that expressed some concerns that we had based on what we had heard about the reorganization. Now, one of the difficulties there were the concerns that we had were based on what we had heard from people at the library, but not necessarily based on documentation that had been presented by the administration. So that's kind of a little bit of a challenge there, yeah. But we had put together a letter there. Now, one of the things that I think is, I had spoken about this with a librarian, and I was like, I am hearing concerns from students about the reorganization of the library. What can I advise students to do? And one thing that this person said was how student voices very strongly affect what the library does. So there is I think a suggestion box or a drop box that's at the library. If you find, and this is you, this is not me telling you to do something. So if you find that your pattern of using the library has changed, that you're having difficulty accessing resources on which you depend, then I think it's really important that you and your fellow classmates who have that same experience fill out a card and put it in the suggestion box. Now, this librarian explained to me one significant change that had happened from student suggestion box suggestions. I know it seems so outdated, like putting something in a suggestion box, it's like, I don't know, it sounds like the 80s, but it actually worked. So a couple of years ago, students were concerned that during the time of exams and during the last weeks of class, Simmons students weren't able to find seating, weren't able to use resources in the library because the library was being used by people from the colleges of the Fenway and some members of the public. And Simmons students felt like their ability to study and prepare for exams was being compromised. So the students put these notes in a suggestion box. And as a result, I don't know if you guys realize this, but at the time of final exams, the Simmons Library is closed except to Simmons students. And that was an effort undertaken by students that affected a significant change in how the library works. If we see that as an exemplar, I think we can see some of the ways that some of our voices might be heard. If we look at the suggestion box as a potential means for conveying that information that's worked in the past, then we might want to do that in the future and do that now. I think it's really important to make sure that any kind of suggestion that you make is based on your experience right now, not on what you fear your experience might be, because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, or how that's going to affect us. So make sure that you are speaking from your experience, and make sure that you do use the communication mechanism that's available to make your voice heard. And I think that's the most important message to come out of there.
I would also like to add that if you can't make it into the library to leave your remarks, you can email us at library@simmons.edu. So if you're online or not on campus very often and your time is tight, please send us that email that goes directly to our library admin.
Oh, that's great, great.
And then just one other thing to add, one of the more recent issues to come out of the library, and I don't want to spend the whole time talking about the library, but it's important, is the fact that we don't actually have accessible, like universal access doors at all in the library, particularly for the study rooms and for the basic entry rooms. So for example, during these periods where only Simmons students can come into the library to study, you have to tap your card, right? Because the doors are closed, but there's no way for folks to like get into the building or to get into the actual floor. So this is something that like we can advocate for as a student body and as like SLIS in general, but that's one of the specific things amidst all these changes that I know there's been some efforts to get folks together on.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so you can push.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Vivian went to the Senate today, because I was just
Okay.
talking to the president of the Senate before coming over, and she mentioned, we were talking a little bit about the library situation. She said Vivian was there and has a cost estimate, and so discussions are underway now, and I think that would be an important thing for everyone to advocate for, because
Absolutely.
I don't see how you cannot have, be ADA compliant.
Right.
I don't get that. So I think we'll win that one. But I think we need to make it known that we're aware.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, and I think the other thing, so this is obviously a diversity issue, and it's an access issue related to diversity. So our DIAC, which is our college-wide diversity and inclusion action council, is one group. I think we have a student representative there. That's one group that could agitate. I think any kind of student organizations related to diversity specifically, because Simmons has named diversity and diversity understood sort of broadly as an agenda item and as something that we can work on. I think it's important for us to address the success with which Simmons is pursuing that agenda item. And I think one way to do that is through mechanisms that have been created in service of the pursuit of that agenda item.
Any other questions in the room? Yeah.
I have a library-related question also. You said that the faculty gave the administration a letter of concerns. Did that result in them providing you with documentation?
I'm afraid not. We did get a response, but it was a little bit boilerplate.
So the letter was sent in July. We had 22 faculty members' signature there. Was sent to the president provost, the president of the Senate, the director of the library. And then it was in July. I didn't hear back until a month and a half later. And the response was they did research about
Not cited. Sorry.
about the trend in academic libraries, and they think this is actually the right thing to do. And even though they understand our concern, basically they're saying that, we actually cited the standards from accreditation, like different regional
NIASC,
right,
ALA,
about the
I think.
importance of library.
SLA and SAA.
Yeah, and then they basically dismissed that. So that's, and then I asked whether the faculty want to pursue, get back to them, and then the faculty said, just forget about it, just say thank you. But one thing I do want to bring to attention, I mean, even as a student, you want to pay attention to how the librarians their working environment are not turned into. It's actually work bench they're having, not even a isolated, kind of, private cubicle. So what they're going to be working at is really a shared space. It's very difficult to actually get individual consultation. I think the faculty's letter clearly indicates this is a lack of understanding of information professionals' work. And they just assume since we're moving towards online, there's no need for librarians basically having their own office. So this is not right.
So I think that it's really important, when it comes to student activism, I think it's really important to speak from your experience and not what you're worried about. So make sure that if you are going to make suggestions in the suggestion box, it comes from your experience and not from what you're anxious about might happen. When it comes to concerns about librarians' work environments, I think it's important, if you want to be an advocate for a group of people, make sure that you are using your voice to amplify their concerns. That means you need to understand what their concerns are and be sure that you articulate those and not your own. So that's just an FYI.
I just want to add, so Amy had talked about this external review panel report and the issue of communication from the upper administration. And this is an example that if we had information before, knew in advance of some things that were happening, the rationale behind them. So the library is one example. The food service is another. I mean, people were in total panic when suddenly it was shut down. They came running over to me to say, we're not going to get what's going on. We're not eating. And there was a whole plan. Now, granted, it hasn't worked out as they thought it would, because you can wait for 45 minutes to get, a cup of coffee in the morning because the lines are just totally out of control. But if we had known that there was a plan, where the food was going to be, having the communication beforehand would at least allow us to understand. So we've been pointing these issues out, and I thought the provost was going to extend an apology because in front of me, she did apologize for the lack of communication. And I'm hoping that, the community, she said, we made a mistake. We didn't communicate. We need to communicate. It's a big problem here, and Colin knows about that because he formed a committee for us on communication to try to figure out what do alumni need to know, what do students need to know, what do faculty need to know. But we can't communicate to you if we don't know. And I found out about the food issue and the library at the same time as everyone else did. I didn't know sooner, and I still don't know the answer.
Well, is it all college? No, at the SILIS, no, not the SILIS, COSIS faculty meeting, the provost was told about this, unreasonable food situation.
Yeah.
That was how many weeks ago?
Well, they are serious.
They're working
on it. Oh, yeah. No, Donna Ng is they're
Okay.
working on it very seriously.
Okay.
they've also waited in line and got gotten.
That's the best.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Sidetrack to go back to the library, I think what, like from a student standpoint, I think why a lot of like school students are kind of upset about the libraries is not necessarily just because of lack of the communication, it's just the fact that as students, we missed out on opportunity to evaluate and to study and use this is like our space, and we missed out on like a way we could impact Simmons, and like we could have done a lot of input, like people to do studies for years to refigure their library space, and it was turned out very quickly. And
No, I agree with you. There were a lot of missed
so I'm just
opportunities.
that's just another thing that I think that why the library is kind of roughed in the wrong way. We missed out on incredible opportunity to apply our skills on something.
And I do know that people are upset because of the dumpsters, like books being thrown in the dumpster. But I did talk to some of the librarians to confirm, even developing countries don't want books anymore. They want computers, and there was no place to send them. But again, it was a time issue, and I don't know why it had to be on that time frame, maybe to try to get it more advanced by fall. But if we had, I mean, it would have been a great opportunity for hands-on experiential learning and to help make it a better
But we have a great usability lab here, and so like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to update the library website, and wanted all these things for the library, and they have a library school.
Sure.
Utilize us because we're free right now. So we won't be.
But that's the exact perspective. That's the exact perspective we put in our letter to say faculty and students are not consulted. And we are, we teach, like I said, we are teaching library professionals, so we didn't even get a chance to give input.
Can we move away from the library? Okay.
We can always come back to it
We
later.
can. Oh, Savannah, yes.
My first question, I'm asking on behalf of a colleague/student here. She was curious to know how to go about registering for a tech class, the CS classes that were offered last semester. I did point out that I did not see it this semester, but I wasn't sure if that meant it's floating in there somewhere, but I missed it, or I feel as if it's, so her question had multiple portions to it. So one was, since it was an undergrad class, does that mean as a grad student, she would have to do extra stuff to make up for it? Or how would she also go about signing up for it? Because she said it looked complicated, and I wasn't sure if it was similar to that WISE courses where I feel as if it's like completely another story altogether.
Well, so I think, first I'm going to explain why maybe you don't see the CS courses. So as you guys know, Simmons is in the process of a reorganization. And right now, the School of Library and Information Science is under the heading of the College of Organizational, Computational, and Information Science. So under sciences, under the umbrella of College of Organizational, Computational, and Information Science are 3 divisions. One division is the School of Library and Information Science, one is the School of Business, and one is the Division of Mathematics and Statistics. No,
Computer science.
Computer Sciences. So in the old days, the School of Library and Information Science included computer science and it included children's literature. Right now, the School of Library and Information Science includes just Library and Information Science, the MS and the PhD programs, and the attendant dual degree programs that touch the School of Library and Information Science. Now, CS is operating in a slightly different division. When CS, Computer Science, was in the School of Library and Information Science, we scheduled all of their classes the same way we scheduled all of the LIS classes, all of the CHL classes. So when you get your grid, it had CS classes, it had LIS classes, it had CHL classes. Now, because we're slightly different, we just don't schedule the CS classes anymore. So that's why they're missing. They are still in ARC, and they are still in courses.simmons.edu. If you look, it's the CS, I think it's CS is the first, is the thing at the beginning. So you should be able to find those. Now, with regards to registering for classes, this is a little bit of a challenge because they're undergraduate classes, this is a kind of case-by-case basis. Because we're a graduate program, Accepting undergraduate courses for credit towards a graduate program can be problematic. One of the reasons it can be problematic is because standards for teaching in an undergraduate program versus a graduate program are different. For example, in a graduate program or in our graduate program, to teach for us, you must have a master's degree at a very minimum. In an undergraduate program, you don't necessarily have to have the master's degree. So if a person were going to take a class, an undergraduate class that was taught by someone who didn't have the master's degree, they would be engaging in a learning experience that doesn't reflect the learning experience that we set up here. So that would be a problem. I think the other thing would just be whether or not while a person might be engaging in some skill building that would be distinct and different from what a person would be able to engage with in our current curriculum. I think the other challenge would be, is this a graduate level course? Is somebody doing not just the skill building, but the sort of theoretical and the thinking work? So I think that one of the things we might do is treat it as we might treat any course that you're taking from outside.
No,
you
there are
can do
courses
that.
that are cross-listed
that are
already,
cross-listed.
and we've
Okay.
identified, I think at least a half a dozen that have been listed with both the CS number / LIS, because those we know already count. So we need to know the specifics, but I think this is a to-do item for us, because I think we need to talk to Nanette Bayer, who's the director of that division, and find out if we can add the courses that we used to list back in, because I think that's a great point that it didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, one, you want the particular numbers of the class to see if it's still feasible to be added.
If it was feasible, it is feasible.
Right.
It may not be offered every semester. Some are offered once a year because they don't have that many undergraduate students. But
Okay.
So if a person is looking for a class that had been LISCS and they just don't see it on the schedule, then we'll see if we can find out where it is. If a person is thinking about a CS class that they've seen in the past that had never before been cross-listed, then that might be a little bit more of a challenge. So,
and we talk to an advisor.
Yes, go to your advisor. Tell the person they should go to their advisor, and then I'll work with them about the course and talk to Nanette, who's the division director. And then in terms of paying, they pay for the course, and that course is, most undergraduate courses are 4 credits. So that's going to,
But when we
augment.
cross-list them, I think we cross-listed 3. If
It is 3, if it's cross-listed. Otherwise, it's a 3-credit course, and the person will have to pay the 3 credits if it's given permission to take that course.
When you say cross-listed, do you mean under
The CS/LIS.
Okay. My question is, I am in the IS&T concentration, and I, of course, am partial to IS&T classes. I do feel as if, even though there were many listed in our 2-year tentative plan, when I'm ready to register, I don't have that much options, unfortunately. And I know you like to hear the titles of the classes. I don't know the titles of the classes. But I know, I took Professor Wrong's UX class, which I was really interested in, but I felt like so much was squashed into just those 3 months. Would have been awesome if it was, part 1 and 2. And so, because it was one of those classes where we got to apply our skills and do hands-on activities. Because when I'm looking for a UX job, they're asking me for so many skills that I could have potentially learned had I had the time. But because I didn't, I feel as if there are many things that I have to learn myself. And I think this was something that we touched on last time, and my takeaway from that was, I know Dean Ables, when we were interviewing you, you were talking about teaching students how to learn rather than teaching everything to them. And I'm trying my best to do that, but it's really hard.
Well, one suggestion in that case, which is a great example, the course, you learned a lot in the class, but it was only 1 class, and we don't have a second one in that particular area. That's usually a good time to do an independent study with a faculty member, because you have an interest in an area and you have a skill set you want to go on, and it wouldn't be repeating the class, it would be building on the class. And because we have the usability lab, that's just one thing, because we have other courses that are under review. I think we're teaching interoperability right now, so we've been adding some classes, but we have limited faculty to teach all the courses.
So this touches on the other point that I wanted to make, was there are many classes that I would like to expand my knowledge on, such as like database management or something. I just feel like we touch on it, but we just scratch the surface, and just when we should be learning more, like building on it, we don't have that option. So please make more ICT classes.
And what I'm hearing you say is something that I will bring back to the curriculum committee, and something that I think about quite a bit is what we might call the flatness of the curriculum. If all of the classes you take are introduction classes, then you're kind of a person of all trades, but maybe not a master of any. And so how does the curriculum provide people an opportunity to master certain things? And I think that's a question for curriculum design, and it's one that's informed by both our desires and our aspirations, as well as what resources we have now. So I think this kind of feedback is super important. And it's the kind of feedback that might be good to say, include in an exit survey, or because I read all of those. It might be feedback as appropriate for a course evaluation, however, as appropriate. And it's something certainly to share in this environment because.
And we have a note taker.
Yeah.
An action item.
Now, the tricky thing is, it's not quite as easy to be like, okay, UX2, Professor Tang, next month.
She left. She's jumping on the ground.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I think this is a real, valid, and important concern. However, I think addressing the concern is something that is going to take a little bit longer, and perhaps maybe longer than your tenure at Simmons. Dean Abel's suggestion that you engage in an independent study, especially with regards to Professor Tang and the UX. Perfect idea. Like that, I don't know why that didn't come to my mind first. But oh my goodness, you want to get in that lab? I'm gonna make a big assumption that maybe you're already in UXPA.
I'm not, but I'm in many other ones.
Now I know that you were I know that you have got a million leader hats. But okay, if you are into usability, all right, student leaders. I am sorry. Maybe drop one of your responsibilities. I know, because they do. I know. They do a lot of. We drop our responsibilities. I'm just saying that to one person. And tell your friends.
We're all guilty.
I'm sorry.
If you have a specific question, you are getting your money back.
Yeah. So, I would really, especially if you're interested in usability, Professor Tang also does that group, and they do a lot of really good professional activities. All of our students
catch me before, and I'm thinking about it too.
I would really encourage you involved. Or even if you're not involved in the group, keep an eye out for the activities and participate in those activities. Everyone can come to those events and
I have a question from the internet. So it's long, sorry.
Okay.
Why was the government documents course removed from the course list? And are there any plans to offer a similar class again? I'm particularly disappointed because the course and the legal information sources and services course were both listed as active courses when I applied and enrolled, and were must-have classes when I was deciding on school. I understand that the course list on the website doesn't guarantee that a course will be offered, but I find it bizarre that an entire specialty has been effectively cut from the program, and government docs isn't even that niche. If there were any opportunities for students to express interest in these classes when these decisions were being made, I didn't hear about it. Relatedly, I hope SLIS updates the list of all courses on the website to avoid misleading students in the future.
Yeah, so first I'm going to address the important point that this person makes, is that it's important to have the most current list of active courses. And we've been making a very concerted effort to weed courses from our list that haven't been taught in 2 years. It's not just something that we're doing out of the goodness of our hearts, it's something that we do to reflect broader accreditation standards.
It's a NEASC requirement.
Yeah, not ALA, but NEASC. And that's something that, I'm sure you can sympathize, is always a difficult thing to do. It's hard to say goodbye to classes that we know are valuable, but but we don't have the resources, or we might not have the critical mass of interested parties to take the class. In the case of government documents and legal information sources, those are two classes where it was that confluence of that confluence of issues. We didn't have the immediate expertise, and we didn't have the historic student interest in those courses. And absent those, we can't put our resources there. Additionally, those were courses that had not been, I'm going to speak to the government documents most specifically, but a lot of changes have happened in the world of government documents with regards to the way libraries describe them, with regards to the way they house them, and with regards to the availability of government documents on the internet at large. And the former government documents class, you know, in the old days, we were teaching like that, okay, apologies to government documents, but that weird form of organization that they use that nobody understands. But we were teaching that, and we were focused on the, you know, we were focused on the print material. We need to revise and update that class, and we needed expertise to do that. And we want that expertise to come from our faculty. Absent that resource, it would be doing a disservice to students to offer them a class that included outdated information that didn't reflect the most current stuff.
So I think Amy will let you know that it's true when I say I was bugging her a lot to get that particular course an updated version of it. A lot of them don't use the documents in the title anymore, government information, because of all the changes. And we had a faculty member who retired some years ago, the only one who ever taught that course. I said, surely we can find a really great adjunct. And Laura Saunders contacted many people because, you know, there are these repositories in major libraries. I thought we got BU, we got Harvard. I mean, and she really tried, and she would send me an email almost a day saying, well, I tried BU, not interested. I tried BC, I mean, she really did try. I agree, this is an important class, but as Laura said, if we don't, we have tried and we have to offer it. Right now, one point though might be at least to get it on WISE if someone else is offering at another institution to be really focused on those courses that we want to bring back and can't, or even try to find some kind of partnership. I think it's a really valid point. And the legal one, what is with the
legal, same situation, didn't have the expertise, the immediate expertise, and the course was getting outdated and we didn't have the capacity to update it. I think the legal information course also speaks to a greater sort of curriculum design issue. We have a number of courses that are disciplinary resource courses, and the disciplinary resource courses are ones that may or may not, you know, do the service they need to do. One, and this is a preview of coming attractions, we do have a new course called Advanced Information Sources and Services that we are hoping to pilot in fall 2018. And that would be getting more into the disciplinary resources, not usurping the business or the academic libraries or the other courses that we're offering. But that might be a good compromise for that person. Meanwhile, this is an important piece of feedback that's needed, and I think something we need to address. Our goal is quality, and with regards to those courses, we kind of couldn't offer that. And the other thing, and this is the bottom line thing, we weren't getting enough people registering for those classes.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. This is in regards to usability, actually. I am in Wrong's usability class, which is online, and I'm just wondering why that class was chosen to be offered online when we do have a usability lab that we're not making use of.
Yeah. So our program has expanded to include online course offerings. And as we expand to include online course offerings and make it possible for anybody who takes our courses online to be able to complete the MSLIS program, we want them to have access to the same full complement of courses that you guys have access to on the ground. And so our first objective was to get the required courses online, and then the courses that were required for concentrations, because those are required for students to get the concentration. And then we issued a broader call for electives. And so that was one course that is a popular and necessary course that we moved to the online environment. Well,
we still have
that we still offer it face-to-face. We are probably going to offer it in alternating online and face-to-face form. As you know, what I am guessing is that, so this this fall is online, probably next fall is face-to-face, vice versa. Now, while yes, we do have a usability lab that we should take more advantage of. Also, I know that the course involves mobile usability and the use of resources beyond those, and I'm going to say pretty expensive ones that we have at the usability lab. What does a person do when they're doing usability on the fly? What does a person do when they're engaged in web development and they don't have a usability lab? One of the things that the online course kind of brings to your attention is, when you don't have a usability lab, what do you do? And I think that that's something that reflects a real situation and a real circumstance. So our goal in putting that class online, as was our goal in putting any classes online, is to take our expertise further afield and to modify the classes as appropriate for the online environment and for the resources that we can be ensured that students have in their home locations. So.
Okay, I guess it's just, this goes back to the issue that we've been having. It's just frustrating as someone who moved here, like uprooted their life, moved to a very expensive city, and I don't know why it can't be like a hybrid course, like the students, because actually that's kind of, this is wrong of me to assume that, but I thought there might have been some opportunity for students who were in person taking this class to go to the usability lab.
Did you ask wrong time about that? Because I don't see why she wouldn't.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. We did a mobile tour of the usability lab, which just seems kind of silly to me. And I know she wants our feedback, and she's been upfront that she's not super pleased it's online.
But see, if we have online students, so we have students living in California, all over the world, they need to get the same rich curriculum that we have here. And you just hit it on the offering. Like if it had been face-to-face this semester and online next semester, you might not have made a difference. But I don't see why the students who are here wouldn't have access to it. But she has to make sure, and she's done some very cool things with online to give students access to that. So I think I will speak to her as well.
Okay.
If you guys, all the students who are on campus can form a group and work on the usability lab here on campus.
Yeah, I get our assignment. We have to do like the whole project has to be done through GoToMeeting and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo what you said because I'm also in that. And
okay.
It's, the in-person one is only offered my very first semester, and it's just not. When you take your first semester, it's just hard to take a class like that.
You would not have taken that.
Yeah, so I never had the option to do it in person, which is a bummer for me. And yeah, the online remote usability testing is sort of like a trending thing, but GoToMeeting isn't actually necessarily even used for remote online testing in the field. So it's and Rom's, she's trying, and it's awesome. I really think she's an amazing teacher.
Yeah.
But it's just a very challenging situation to turn this class into an online class.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, trying to do the major aspect of this course is a group project. And when you're trying to coordinate a group project with people who live in California, and people do online classes because they have crazy schedules.
Right.
So it's just a nightmare trying to schedule things for a group project where all of your work is going into this, and then you can only meet for an hour a week, or if you're lucky, So I just want to echo what you said because it's been challenging.
I completely understand, and I'm completely sympathetic, but I do want to sort of readjust your perspective a tiny bit. What I'm hearing are the kinds of concerns that emerge anytime a person offers a course for the first time. So the first time, I'm imagining that the first time the usability course was offered, one of the challenges was figuring out how to use the limited resource of the usability lab among all of the students. So one of the challenges that you guys are facing in the online environment is analogous to a challenge that was likely to be in place when the course was run for the very first time. So I think one of the things that you're experiencing is the same thing that all students experience when they're participating in kind of a course experiment with their professor. I think the other thing, and I can speak in this as an observer in this class as well, the scheduling is not better on the ground. I'm sorry. Like the
For me,
yeah, well, no, I mean, the challenges that the students faced, like the project-based nature of the class, the challenges that the students face to schedule time outside of class, to me is unfortunately not mitigated by everybody being in the same situation.
It's challenging, but when you have different time zones.
Yeah,
You have, like, literally, like, people do online classes because they have crazy schedules.
Yeah.
And I know it is challenging. I've been in many classes with different functions, but this is like beyond that. I'm just
I hear you. Well, and I think this, like, again, this feedback is super important.
Yeah.
And I think this feedback kind of helps us not only inform, we can provide Professor Tang with some of this feedback, and we can kind of use it as we think about and we work with other professors around project-based classes that might involve students from, further afield than Boston.
Yeah, and I think she's such a great professor. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, definitely. I echo
But I
that.
think it's a very challenging course to have on. That's just my.
And I think this is the first time it's being offered.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And she knows that, and she's been, I've actually sat in her office when, she has office hours and nobody asks any questions or comments. And she's sending you guys notice, so.
Yeah, I've been going.
Good.
Okay, another question from the internet. When will information regarding the restructuring/renaming of SLIS be shared with students, and what effects can we anticipate it having on the program?
Okay, so Simmons is engaged in a gradual rollout of the whole reorganization situation. And so one thing that's really fortunate for us is nothing has really changed. Everyone is still involved in an LIS program in the School of Library and Information Science. As a result of this reorganization, your education is not going to change. Everyone who's in the MS program will continue to get the Master of Science. Your Master of Science degree has always said Simmons College Master of Science. We know that I might even say Library and Information Science, but
No.
It just says Master of Science.
Right.
So that is not going to change at all. Your degree requirements are not going to change unless we make the kind of curricular changes that we do on a regular basis, no matter what. When it comes to when is this stuff going to premiere, I think it's a timing issue. As you guys noticed, the website hasn't really caught up with this. Like, I haven't seen anything on the website that says College of Organizational, Computational, and Information Sciences yet. So I think at the big administrative level, it's a matter of when do you make this big thing public? And when do you make this big thing public, not just in a whisper campaign, but across the board? So right now, we're sharing with you guys the stuff that we can share with you already. That we've been sharing with you all along. But how the bigger structure looks like, what that bigger structure looks like, honestly, we're not sure how it's going to be lived. We know what it's going to look like broadly, but we don't know what it's going to be lived like. And we're working on figuring out what COSIS is lived like. With regards to LIS students, really, no change. Everyone's still getting the Master's in Library and Information Science or related to a degree. You're still doing it under the auspices of the School of Library and Information Science. You're still getting a Master of Science that comes from Simmons College. And our curriculum is not going to change unless we do the usual kind of curriculum work. So that is the short answer to the feedback question.
But we should say so the School of Library and Information Science, effective July 1, is a division. As Amy mentioned, there are 3 divisions: School of Library and Information Science, School of Business, and the Mathematical and Computer Sciences division. So each of those has or will have a division director. The division director is going to be very similar to what a dean did because it's almost what GISLIS was in 2013 and then became SLIS. At that time had children's lit and computer science. So it's still 25 faculty members, the PhD, the MSLIS, postgraduate degrees. And then there's a dean of the big COSIS. And there's also a search for the big dean of COSIS. I'm in that position temporarily because I'm going to be retiring. And then there are searches on for directors. And Amy is the program director right now. And together we're running SLIS. So I think that from the student's perspective, will they know the difference between a director who would be sitting here and engaging? I'm sure the dean will also engage. We don't know the background, but these searches are going on, and it's my understanding that students will be involved when they're brought to campus. Directors in particular, we hope students will come out and ask questions and get involved in the hiring.
And the director committee, the director search committee, we're all looking for student background.
Great opportunity.
Great opportunity to tell everybody online. Yeah. So, yeah.
Just while we're at it, just to say, we have 2 faculty searches going on right now. One is for specifically in the technology area, because some of you may know Shashan Lee was here and taught some of the courses that you're talking about, and it was a rather sudden departure. We had Rachel Williams, who was teaching 488, the prior person will be teaching database because she taught that in Milwaukee before. So, we're fortunate that we happened to have hired her as that happened. But so we have that search and another for the org area.
2 more online questions, unless anybody else wants to jump in.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, this whole registering for a WISE class is just way beyond my feeble human mind. So I was wondering if this could be like, either part of the orientation, or like even have like a point person as to, if you're interested in registering for a WISE class, can you please have this particular person walk you through it or something like that? Because I feel as if until we have either more course offerings in a particular section, that could be a great alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just speak to the WISE issue real quick. So WISE, for folks who don't know, is the web-based information science education consortium. And so we participate with a number of other ALA accredited schools in offering online courses to students at the various schools. So we offer the consortium a couple of seats in our classes, and they offer our students a couple of seats in some classes. So the tricky part is the seats that they offer us can sometimes be contingent, depending on how many people are demanding those seats. So it's kind of like a second level registration. If you're interested, just for everyone here, if you're interested in the WISE class, I would encourage you to register as usual right now. Register for classes on the ground or online through LISSA. You'll get a list of WISE classes for which seats are available for students or seats are contingently available for students around the end of the month. If you're interested, and I'll be sending out that email so I can be a little, I can work, to make the process more explicit. If you're interested in one of those courses, you can get in touch. And what happens is, you're pretty much like, okay, I know you're interested. Let's see if there's still room for you at this other institution. And so the tricky part is sometimes that other institution is going to say no. And so because sometimes that other institution is going to say no because they've reached capacity, it's important to have your regular classes on the ground and not count on that. That said, we've had a really good record of placing students in classes. So that's a thumbs up. The one thing that we would caution students against is if you are given a seat in a WISE class, it's kind of bad manners to give it up. It's kind of bad, it's like if somebody had invited you to a wedding and you're invited as a single person and you want to bring a +1 and you harass the bridal couple and you're like, please let me bring a +1, let me bring a +1. And finally they're like, okay, we'll get you another plate of chicken. And you're like, yes. And then the day comes and you're like, we broke up. Then that is super tacky, especially if it was $50 a plate and they ordered you another one. If that happens, just find another date. Just bring an animal.
To your point, it should be easy because I think it's like you're registering for a course. We give it a number here.
We give it a number here.
And
you pay the same amount.
Be the point person.
We can't.
We
just can't affect that registration until we get that approval from that other institution.
Right, and I don't think we're disadvantaged against other institutions.
No,
it's a group, it's a consortium.
Yeah,
group.
no.
But I'm just saying that once Amy sends the email out, it should be simple. It's just what she's saying is you can't 100% count on it.
Right, I just don't think, you explained it so beautifully now, but I don't think folks beforehand, like, I mean, I'm graduating next semester, hopefully. But like, I didn't know much about this until I have, like, had you explain it, or like, reading or chatting with people who have done the classes before. I just feel like, there are so many other folks out there who would benefit from this knowledge.
Well, we tend to do really well by our students taking WISE courses, perhaps a
Right,
little bit
they
more.
just don't know about either the existence, or if they did, they're not sure as to the logistics of how to register for those classes.
Yeah, I think, and also one of the things is their timetables are off too. So if you're graduating next semester, you think about it, whether or not you want to take the course, because at the institution, their timetable may not be the same. It's like taking a course away from here, where the course might not end for another 2 weeks, and that could affect your graduation. So just keep that in mind too if you're taking a course.
But it is a great opportunity. I think we're saying a lot. It's a great opportunity because they're all good programs.
And what I love about it is that we are offering, they offer things that we don't teach here. And you're right, so we'll promote it. Yeah.
So just FYI, you should be getting some information from me about WISE opportunities by the end of this month.
And it happens every semester. We do send information out separately too, as you stated.
We just haven't chosen the course yet. Also, you need to register for your regular courses first.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't want to muddy the waters.
Speaking of courses from the internet, why on earth did you just remove the spring break section of special libraries? We need more options, not fewer.
Wow. That was like immediate news. Okay, so I gotta say.
Why was it?
Okay, so it had to do
News to me.
Yeah, I was like, I'm here. I didn't even know.
faculty member had overcommitted themselves, and it turns out their contract only allows them to teach so many classes, and they had taught one already. So they had committed themselves to 3 classes in the semester, a short course in the spring, a short course in the winter, and a blended course in the semester, and that was over the amount that they are allowed to teach for the year. And so, honestly, the reason was an oversight with regards to that person's contract. And so it was an effort to figure out which version of the course would serve the students in Boston best. The first priority was to keep the West course, because that, if we got rid of that, people at West would have nothing. So we'd have to get rid of the Boston one so that people at West would have an opportunity and people at Boston would have an opportunity. Getting rid of the spring break version was one that wanted to reduce the competition for spring break classes, as we had prior to the removal of that class from the schedule. We had 3 spring break classes going.
Yeah.
So the other reason was to think about the accessibility of the class to a broader group of students. The class is going to be taught in a blended form during the spring semester. So ideally or optimally, that doesn't involve as many trips to campus. So that seemed to be the format for Boston that would serve or potentially serve the most students and allow the most students to take advantage of alternative short course spring breaks. So that was the reasoning. So it started with a mistake about a faculty member's contract for teaching, and then it emerged to a decision that was made with an eye towards what would best serve the students in Boston and maintain a course for the students at West.
I just also want to say during spring break, there is also going to be an alternative spring break. And it's not for credit, but it's an opportunity for those people who aren't taking anything and are staying in the city and want to do some do some social justice community work. So what it is serving an elder center with materials from the Boston Public Library. So keep that in mind. If you can share that with the world on here.
Also, shameless derail plug.
Oh, yes.
That's right, which is, put that
Derail
in,
will be March 3rd and 4th.
which is
so,
before.
Yeah, which is
the
the
break.
weekend before.
Yeah.
So,
Lots to do if you're in
Yes,
town
that's
for spring
right.
break.
so info meetings on presentations and volunteering coming very soon.
Well, can I just, one more, this is another derail plug and also an accolade. One of the things that Derail has done really well is make its programming available outside of the campus. So this is really a strong example of that kind of programming that reaches not just the public and the library public, but also our online students, and that invites online student participation. So I think, I'm not sure what your guys' ideas are for engaging our online students in our greater Simmons community, but one model for doing that is Derail. So if there are any online students out there who are currently listening to this streaming situation, the Derail conference/unconference is going to be open for you too. You don't have to be here in Boston.
Correct. All right, and the last online question I have is, what is LISS doing to affect a greater gender parity in the program?
So I guess I'm trying to figure out is this a person who, okay, first, are they speaking to a gender binary?
Any more context for that? That is the question.
Is this a question, is the person asking whether or not we're working to recruit more assigned male at birth students?
If so, then answer it from how do you want to answer? Because it's a professional
It's a
issue.
national.
Yeah, more of a global issue.
So is the person asking about, I guess I'm kind of confused about how the person's defining gender parity.
I am too.
If they're still,
Is this still there that you could ask them?
No, they submitted this question
Okay.
in advance through our form. So
I'm afraid I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay.
So the person with this question is invited to email Amy Patty.
If you could just clarify.
Clarify the question on the form. Yeah,
Yeah,
on the form,
and
preferably.
we will get back to you, but we're not sure which one.
Sorry.
Does anyone in the room have any more questions?
No, okay. I haven't gotten anything on Twitter.
We'll take a couple of minutes, take a break. Got more
Or
questions?
just end.
Or we can end.
Coffee, you're like, this is water.
Oh, do that.
Just recycle the styrofoam cup.
We use it throughout the day.
Yeah.
So last call for questions.
Oh, well, I just realized that there's like only a couple faculty here, but I'm just curious if like faculty have any perspectives on some of what's going on campus or with the reorg or just kind of in general. If you have feedback. We don't really get to hear from faculty directly very often outside of the classroom, and I know a lot of the changes on campus are impacting y'all as well. So just wanted to open that
I
up.
would say that the faculty, at least speaking for me, we are in the same position as the students. We're just waiting to see how things are going along. So if you hear anything.
I'll jump in and say that I had the opportunity to be on a college-wide communications committee in the spring into the summer. I can't remember. And our provost came to one of those meetings, and it was somewhat of a strategy meeting, or it was a communication meeting to figure out, how do we communicate changes, or what should we be thinking about in terms of the reorganization. And I did have the opportunity to share with the provost that the timing really matters and the messaging really matters, because, and so if there's a way to develop, this is where the sort of, messaging points or bullet points that can be shared. Right, like that, just the being incredibly mindful that whatever student body is on campus at the time of the reorg, that not to take that lightly and to be really proactive and anticipating where those students could be impacted within the larger organization, because we don't know a lot of things still, but so I don't want to speculate too much here. But the message I was trying to communicate was that if students came in and didn't know that a reorg was happening, and then they got here and a bunch of stuff changed, that could potentially be a real huge problem, right? And so I was sort of asking, what was the plan if to be proactive. And the good news is I think that got across in terms of the whole committee, which had a lot of different representatives from across campus, and the provost was there, and she was sitting right next to me. I think that was heard. And so I was glad as a faculty member who I was concerned about this, but ultimately for students who are going to be coming into potentially a situation of change that they didn't know was happening, that we're just being very thoughtful and intentional and strategic and have something figured out and a plan, and even messaging points that could be shared across campus and how. So because of the staggered, sort of process. So it's good news that, I think that what I heard as a response was, yes, let's get on that and make sure that we are really paying attention to things where we may not know could happen, but let's consider all the angles and who could be impacted by changes. And that messaging is really important for everybody to be on the same page. So that was one of my experiences.
I'm gonna pass.
I sat with Amy on a college-wide committee on student policies, and we came in terms of the school. We came up with a draft policy last spring, and it's been stagnant really all the way to this fall because of so many other things that are going on in campus. So we had met over the summer about how we would present these graduate student policies, what things need to be included, what items need to be included. And then there probably would be, we're trying to do a global graduate student policy, but reserve space for each of the differences between the graduate programs, and what kind of policies we should look at first, and what kind of say governmental impact it has on some policies, statewide policies and so forth. And we left that with our chair, and then our chair, one of the co-chairs was Sarah Neal. She left. And so, that office is the leadership is been, 1/3 is left, and there's associate dean, and there's other people that are just trying to keep the college just going on. So we're hoping that our committee will move forward, but we've been kind of living in limbo, and in terms of our policies. But it's because other things are happening on campus. And I think something else we can talk about is we've been hearing that Simmons is going to become Simmons University, but we can't really say that yet.
No, we can't.
Okay, we
Well,
can't.
we can't say that it's confirmed, but we got through the first hurdle. So the fact that there's an application out there that's gone through the first hurdle, we could say.
Okay.
This is actually on Twitter right now, isn't it?
Yeah, so we can say it, okay.
Public?
So we're fine, so we'll just go on.
Has said it.
Yeah, but she says things.
I mean, we put in an application to change, and it apparently went through the first hurdle. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But.
Right.
And I think the important part is what was discussed before, that it doesn't really, the SLIS is still SLIS,
Yeah.
right? So the degree is still your degree.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, and look, there's quite a lot lot of library schools in the United States are a part of other larger departments of education, departments of communication. But we don't know about those larger departments. We just know UCLA or whatever. We just know the school. So I think that, as long as the school has the name of the school and the degree is the degree, that's fairly stable, I would say.
And I think that the external review panel kept coming back to, like, they were looking at who we were, because this is a 7-year period, who we were, but as we were trying to talk about the future, that was the big challenge, because literally as we were submitting these reports, something was changing every day. And we think we have the final version, we get another email from the administration. When we put forth our document, we were calling this COSIS the Green College, because each college had a color and the name had not come out until we had submitted the report. So they're writing and they're calling us the Green College, and I actually got something calling us the Green College. It's not an official name. I mean, unless we find a donor named Green and we can name the college, the Green College, which, but so things were changing, and change in every aspect, and that is reflected in the report, because so many things that we're doing are changing, yet, as Jeanette just said, the only constant is now SLIS and the MSLIS and how decisions are made, and we're not perfect. And I will say that we probably should share some of the initiatives, because it's a time of self-reflection, and we found where we think we can improve. So more on the ground courses, it's on our list. More, electives for students, it's on our list. I mean, we know these things and are working on them. They just only reiterated that we had already identified our weaknesses. So we should probably share those sometimes, because Amy has got a big list and has been working with the faculty to take them on, and Claire's working with her, so.
You should sign. It's the Simmons University.
Oh, yeah.
Don't make it over.
I won't make it over.
I have one last question, so sorry. So the new class that is being offered from the School of Management, the innovative whatever one.
Creativity and innovation.
Yes. So that one is being offered on like 2-day basis.
Yeah, so that's a short course that's an intensive. So I unfortunately cannot remember the actual dates, but I want to say it's at least two-day periods from 10:30 to 4:30. Is that? I'm afraid that my memory.
Either 4:30 or 6, I think, and it's like sort of like every month almost. Like there's 2 days in February, 2 days in March. I just wasn't sure if the coursework that's being offered over the course of those 2 days were equivalent to 3 credits.
Yes.
What course is this? I'm sorry.
This is the GSM course, the creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is the course is going to open up, and you will get pre-reading. So you will get some work to do prior to those meetings, to those class meetings, and you're going to be expected to do 6 hours of work, I want to say they said field work or field trip. And so that might involve the kind of things that, you guys have probably done in classes before, where, each person is supposed to go to a library and assess the collection or something. Of course, this would be in a management context, so I don't know what they're going to have you do. But there are going to be expectations for you outside of the classroom environment, and some of those expectations will be set to be met online, and some of them will involve you doing a little bit of traveling, but then you guys will also be meeting in distinct and lengthy period of time for 2 days at a time for.
Is that Teresa Nelson?
I cannot remember who the instructor is.
I think it's Teresa. I would say reach out to
the instructor. Yeah. So
this is the first time and they asked me, obviously we're under the same, COSIS
umbrella.
Yeah, and so when I'm very interested in innovation and creativity, and think it's an important thing, and we have the library test kitchen, which we're actually not going to be able to have this summer because they can't teach it. So this seemed like a good course to pitch. I know we asked.
That's a shame.
We asked the Harvard group, and they told me they're not.
Yeah, they don't have the bandwidth for the summer, so.
It's
kind of
Yeah.
It's kind of their bag too. It's not like I could be like, oh, well, I'll do it, because that would be terrible. So that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always come back or extend your time.
Oh, I really took it.
Oh, yeah, good, good.
Did you
Yeah, I
like
thought
it?
so.
That was the best class I've taken here.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Sorry.
Whatever it's
Sorry about it.
You're just bummed out for other people, that's all.
Yeah, that.
She wanted other people
Oh,
to take that
that was so
opportunity.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I got homework.
I know. Not only that, she's had a long day.
Thank you for being open to hearing our
Yeah.
thoughts.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
All the
Thank you
things.
so much.
Yeah, this is important. Thank you guys.
Also, thank you to the Media Lab for helping us get this online.
Thank you,
You're
Media
welcome.
Lab. And thank you, everybody online.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks for
attending,
tuning in.
however you
Yeah.
attended. Yes. All right, let's turn our devices
Off.
off. Please stay food, this is just gonna live.